and let's uncover some extraterrestrial phenomena. Whoa. So you look fantastic. Thanks for being a guest on Leak Project.
Thanks, Rex. I've been following the follow-up to since our last show, and I decided to today talk about, this is probably the most terrifying story in ufology in the 21st century because it involves NASA. It involves the Space Shuttle Colombia incident of February of 2003. It involves a UFO and two UFOs and a weapon that was used to take out the Columbia, whose velocity is beyond every single missile we have. And NASA tried to bury the story as what's called a mega lightning strike or a super lightning strike that hit the Columbia. In fact, there's a website, Columbia, Space Shuttle Colombia.info, where they have all of the data on what caused the Columbia incident. And I remember that day. I was lecturing in Sedona, Arizona, about NASA UFOs of all things. And I was smelling the burning outside, as the Columbia was coming apart. So what had actually happened is I was given inside photographs that the NASA actually buried from the public and the press. And they were taken by a tourist in the San Francisco Bay Area that day. And he's using a Nikon Coolpix camera. And we'll look at these photos in just a second. I'll pull them up so we can talk about them. And hang on just a second.
Sure, no problem. So you could actually smell the toxic fumes from the explosion.
Oh, I could actually smell it that day. And it was so incredible to be able just to smell it. It had a smell unlike anything I've ever encountered before, Rex. I mean, it was something really, really shocking. So here's photo number one taken by the tourist. Okay, so what you see is the space shuttle is traveling just over, somewhere in this 38-mile region. So it's in the mesosphere. It's in the lower mesosphere, which is, you'll see, is called the ignorosphere, because scientists say there are things going on in the ignorosphere, the mesosphere, and there's not enough money to study what is actually happening in there. So from left to right is the streak of the Shuttle Columbia. It's doing 12,900 miles an hour left to right, and the incoming comes from above, and you see it spiraling down, and you can see it turns at 90 degrees, and it's heading towards the head of Columbia. Now, the velocity on this thing, according to my mathematical calculations, based on relativity in the 5 photographs you're about to see, it starts out at least 20,000 miles an hour, which is faster than the fastest missile we have. The fastest missile in the world is the ICBM Minuteman, which is 18,000 miles an hour, tops. That's its top speed. So this thing is already going faster than that. But when we go to photograph number 2, it's really gaining on the Columbia very fast. Now, these photographs are taken with a manual shutter approximately on a tripod 1 second apart by the tourist. And we're using them under the Fair Use Act because this guy is furious that these photos got out. And I'm going to give you some history. It's corkscrewing, and in the 3rd photograph, it hits Columbia. Now, notice that the beginning to the end of the supposed lightning strike is still there. Lightning travels at over 200,000 miles an hour, and it only exists for a fraction of a second. And according to studies I did comparatively shooting video, I can only get 2 frames out of 30 of the same lightning strike. So that's a 15th of a second. That's the longest it can last. But this is 4 seconds later, and you're still seeing the beginning to the end. 5 seconds later, you're still seeing the beginning into the end. And 6 seconds later, you're still seeing the beginning to the end, and the debris trail is to the right, where the Columbia is streaking by. So what this tells us, Rex, is that this thing is coming in from the upper mesosphere region. It's corkscrewing, It doesn't resemble lightning in that it doesn't have any fragments. There's no fragmenting here, which, lightning has tentacles. You'll never see a chiral spiraling lightning strike. And notice that it turns at 90 degrees at this speed. You can't turn at 20,000 miles an hour. In fact, we don't know how to go 20,000 miles an hour. Our fighter jets are peaking at 15, 16, 1,700 miles an hour. Okay, so this thing is going over 20. But in this next frame, it's accelerating to 60,000 miles an hour and then it hits. So it goes from 20 to 60,000 miles an hour and hits Colombia. Now, these photographs were hidden from the world by an astronaut named Tammy Jernigan, who confiscated the guy's camera in the San Francisco Bay Area and took it to the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. And she hid everything. And they basically said they had the theory that the shuttle was hit by a super lightning strike. Now, we're going to look at a document now, which is, this document is mind-blowing. We're about to see. So let me go back to screen share. Wait a second, I gotta open this document and back to screen share. And okay, this document, and I'm gonna read it because it's hard for people to see it. 10 years ago, Walter Lyons, a consultant with FMA Research in Fort Collins, Colorado, conducted a study of Sprite, which is mega lightning for NASA. We concluded there's a 1 chance in 100 that the shuttle could fly through a Sprite. What impact, we didn't know for certain. It didn't appear at this time that the energy would be enough to cause problems, but Lyons conceded that the ignorosphere, which is the mesosphere, starting at about 30 miles above the Earth, is a mysterious place that has yielded startling surprises. Since then, with research on electrical streamers, the discovery of blue jets, the doubt has gone up, he said. There are other things up there that we probably don't know about, Lyons said. Every time we look in that part of the atmosphere, we find something totally new. Lack of research funding in capitals, but the field is dominated by a small club of electrophysicists who have seen their money for research dry up. Ironically, an experiment of Israeli astronaut Ilan Ramon aboard the doomed Columbia was among the last fully funded work conducted on Sprite. So this guy was on the Columbia. Lyons, considered to be one of the leading authorities, said he played a role in the design of the experiment. To date, Sprites have required the presence of a significant electrical storm on the ground. As the shuttle passed over Northern California, there were some heavy rain showers in the far north of the state, but none of the wild weather normally associated with Sprites. Hearing a description of the purplish luminous corkscrew in the San Francisco photograph, Lyons said, this was not a Sprite event, not. But even though the press told everyone that it was, and they only showed one of the Goldie photographs, one of the tourist photographs, because if they showed all 5, we would know in a second that the same lightning strike doesn't linger in the sky for not even a full second. Because shooting 30 frames a second of video, we can only see lightning up to a 15th of a second. So how is the same lightning strike in all 5 photographs 6-7 seconds later? So that's why Lyons is saying this wasn't a mega lightning strike. So what was it? So scientists have observed the interaction between a blue jet and a meteor, and he goes on into the connections to meteors, but there were no meteors that day. So guess what happens next? This is incredible. I get this letter from an MIT alumni physicist, and he tells me, because he saw a part of my research on this, and I create an entire report on the velocity of the shuttle, the velocity of the incoming. It's super fast, all right, 60,000 miles an hour, but that's too slow to be lightning. Lightning does 200,000 plus miles per hour. So he sends this letter to the Secretary of the Air Force, Sheila Widnall. He sends it to Jim Smiley at NASA. He sends it to William Burke at Hanscom Air Force Base. He sends it to Elizabeth Fountain at NASA. He sends it to a huge list of people. Dear Dr. Windall, you may recall that I wrote to you over 4 years ago regarding the news which reported that Columbia was hit by some sort of electrical bolt before it exploded. I have concluded the historical email chain below. I very much appreciate your response 4 years ago, which included some pictures of what appeared to be a purple electrical bolt striking at or near the Columbia on its descent. Amazingly, considering its importance, not much more became of the subject of the pictures. I am following up to inquire if anything more was learned on this historical electrical event. I've been in contact with a private space enthusiast named David Sarita. So, and he goes on to say that he's going to attach my report to everybody on the list I just said, including Hanscom Air Force Base and the Secretary of the Air Force. And my report concludes that the incoming is too fast to be one of our missiles. It's coming from the upper mesosphere, this mysterious place where scientists believe we need to be spending a lot more money in research. And then Eric sends me a whole chain of photographs taken by NASA's own cameras of the same event. And guess what's in these photographs? There are 3 UFOs ahead of the Columbia. It confirms, you see, at one point, Tammy Jernigan told the San Francisco Chronicle, Tammy Jernigan is a former space shuttle astronaut, that this purple lightning strike hit the Columbia, but then she thought it was an artifact of the guy's camera. And she wouldn't let anybody else at NASA or the Air Force see the photographs. She buried them. I had them because somebody sent them to me. And so they were seeing them from me, not from the Air Force, not from the tourist, and not from Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, which is where Tammy Jernigan hid the photographs, but from me. So the next thing I do is I discover that when I look at these photographs, and I'll show you these ones next, these ones are the raw images that came to me directly from MIT, my MIT source. And these ones are confirming. See, what you're going to see here in a moment is that the Space Shuttle Columbia was taken out by a UFO or a super advanced weapon in space that was in the crossfire. The shuttle could have been in the crossfire with these UFOs, because my friend George Mosman, whom I met in the middle of this investigation, was in Dallas that day in his lawyer's office looking through pristine Zeiss binoculars and saw 2 lenticular lens-shaped UFOs. One was purple-blue, same color as the incoming, and the other one was gold. And so what you see in this photograph is the space shuttle streaking from left to right, but it's much more clear than the Goldie photographs. The second photo, actually, if you look to the right, those are not spots. Those are the UFOs ahead of the Columbia, the 1, the 2, and the 3 dots. And I can actually zoom in on those for you. You see, so what you're seeing there is the incoming coming from outer space and hitting the Columbia on the left. And on the right is a triangular formation of 3 unidentified flying objects. And one of them in the upper that's closer has kind of a purple hue to it on my monitor. And these are photographs taken by NASA's own cameras. And the fact that the 3 UFOs are visible, the way these cameras work, you don't get to see a star in the sky or a moon or a planet with these kind of cameras and these kind of shutter speeds. So what you're seeing is a triangular formation of 3 unidentified objects ahead of Columbia, which means they're not part of any of its debris behind it. And this is the moment of the strike, so there would not be any debris yet. And then this is kind of a close-up, is a little pixelated from the NASA original, showing the incoming coming from above. Again, no tentacles like a lightning strike, no tentacles. And then this is another photograph here. That's actually the same photograph, but of course this is taken from a completely different angle of Columbia. So Columbia was taken out by an incoming weapon that does not fit any of the arsenal of any of the missiles. There's no missiles we have that can go. The Russians don't have anything that can go anywhere near that. The Russians have a new supersonic missile that can do 7,500 miles an hour, apparently. But you're looking at something that's approaching 60,000 miles an hour. Now, the only thing we know that can go that fast, if we look at the data from the Navy pilot testimony and Kevin Day's radar analysis of the Navy pilot UFO sightings, that the UFOs came on radar from above 80,000 feet and stopped just above sea level in 0.78 seconds. And that's over 60,000 miles an hour right there. And it stopped on a dime. Now notice this thing turns at 90 degrees at that speed. That's the kind of behavior these Navy pilots reported seeing. Okay, so the other thing is, in the series Unidentified with Louis Elizondo, the eyewitness Sean Cahill, who was part of the USS Nimitz crew, and Sean Cahill and I have been in touch. I've given him all this information. He's just speechless because I gave him the photographs and the report. According to his data, and Kevin Day's radar data, all these UFOs convened on Guadalupe Island off the coast of Baja, and they found a magnetic anomaly just north of the Guadalupe Island, and that's where the UFOs disappeared. And if we look at the north latitude of that location, 29 point something degrees is the same north latitude as the Great Pyramid of Egypt. Same north latitude as Great Pyramid of Egypt. Now, guess what else happens at that same north latitude?
What's that?
That's the exact moment we lost contact with the Columbia. It was at that same north latitude in East Texas. So that same north latitude goes through Guadalupe Island. It actually goes right by the Johnson Space Center. And right exactly the moment they lost contact with the astronauts, the last telecommunication was exactly the north latitude of the Great Pyramid of Egypt. Now, I've researched this up with maps and Google Earth, and this can't be a coincidence. There has to be a portal that can explain how these UFOs are coming in and out of these very, very special, kind of interdimensional places on our planet.